The Crow and the Pitcher is a classic fable where a thirsty crow finds a pitcher with water too low to reach, so it drops pebbles into the pitcher one by one, raising the water level until it can drink and save itself. This story illustrates how resourcefulness, clever thinking, patience, and perseverance can help solve seemingly impossible problems. Here is the full story. The thirsty crow, on a scorching summer day, when the sun blazed relentlessly in the sky, a crow found itself in a dire situation. The intense heat had evaporated most of the water from the ponds and puddles where it usually drank. It had flown for miles, its throat parched and its body growing weak from dehydration. The world seemed to shimmer and blur under the oppressive sun, and every flap of its wings took a monumental effort. Desperation began to set in as the crow's search grew more frantic. It flew over dry riverbeds and dusty fields, its sharp eyes scanning the landscape for any sign of life-giving water. The air was thick and heavy, making breathing difficult. And the crow knew that if it did not find a drink soon, it would not survive the day. Its calls, usually strong and resonant, became weak and hoarse, little more than desperate croaks lost in the vast, hot emptiness of the afternoon. The world, which normally teemed with life and opportunity, now appeared as a barren and unforgiving wasteland, a formidable adversary in its simple quest for survival. The crow's very existence hung by a thread, its hope dwindling with every passing moment and every meter of fruitless searching. It was a primal struggle, a battle against the elements for the most basic necessity of life, and the crow was beginning to feel the crushing weight of impending failure. Its black feathers, usually sleek and glossy, were now dull and ruffled, a testament to its exhaustive and so far unsuccessful ordeal. Finding the pitcher just as the crow was on the verge of giving up, its body screaming for rest and its spirit nearly broken, a glint of something caught its eye. It perched on a high branch to gather what little strength it had left. It noticed an object sitting in the parched garden of an abandoned cottage. Hope, a tiny but powerful spark, flickered to life within its weary heart. With a renewed, albeit shaky sense of purpose, the crow flew down to investigate this promising discovery. As it drew closer, it saw that the object was a tall earthenware pitcher left behind by the garden's former inhabitants. The crow's heart beat faster with a mix of excitement and trepidation. Could this be the salvation it so desperately sought? Landing gracefully beside the pitcher, it peered over the rim, its entire being focused on the possibility of water within. To its immense relief, there was indeed water at the bottom. It was not much, just a small amount collected at the very base. But it was clear and cool, a beautiful sight for the thirsty bird. The discovery felt like a miracle, a reward for its persistence in the face of overwhelming odds. In that moment, the pitcher was not just a clay pot. It was a beacon of hope, a symbol of life in a world that had seemed intent on denying it. The crow felt a surge of gratitude and anticipation, believing that its arduous journey was finally at an end and that relief was just a few sips away. The sight of the water glistening in the dim light at the bottom of the container was the most wonderful thing the crow had ever seen. The problem, the crow's initial wave of relief quickly turned into a new form of despair. It eagerly dipped its head into the pitcher, stretching its neck as far as it would go, but its beak stopped short, tantalizingly close to the water's surface, but unable to touch it. The water level was simply too low, nestled deep within the pitcher's narrow base, far beyond the reach of its beak. The crow tried again and again, craning its neck from different angles, hopping around the pitcher in frustration, but the outcome was always the same. The precious water remained inaccessible, a cruel mockery of its thirst. A profound sense of injustice washed over the bird. To have come so far, to have found the one thing it needed to survive, only to be thwarted by a few inches of clay, was a bitter irony. In a surge of desperate strength, the crow tried to topple the pitcher, hoping to spill the water onto the ground where it could be reached. It pushed against the heavy vessel with its shoulder and tried to wedge its beak under the base to pry it over, but the pitcher was too heavy and solidly placed. It would not budge an inch. The crow was exhausted, not just physically from its flight and its efforts to move the pitcher, but mentally. The problem seemed insurmountable, a final cruel trick played by fate. It sat beside the pitcher, its small body trembling with a mixture of fatigue and frustration, staring at the water that was so close and yet so impossibly far. The hope that had soared so high just moments before now plummeted, leaving the crow to confront the grim reality that it might perish from thirst right next to the very water that could save it. The idea defeated and exhausted, the crow slumped beside the pitcher, its mind racing. It could not fly away. Its strength was nearly gone, and there was no guarantee of finding another source of water. It had to find a way to get to the water in this very pitcher. As it sat there, contemplating its predicament, its sharp eyes began to wander, scanning its immediate surroundings, not for escape, but for a solution. The ground around the pitcher was littered with small, smooth pebbles, warmed by the afternoon sun. The crow had noticed them before, but had paid them no mind. Now, however, it looked at them with a new intensity. An idea, faint at first, but growing stronger with each passing second, began to form in its clever mind. It recalled a time when it had accidentally dropped a berry into a small puddle, and it had noticed how the water level rose slightly around the fruit. What if the same principle could be applied here? What if it could add something to the pitcher to make the water rise? The pebbles, scattered so conveniently nearby, suddenly transformed from insignificant stones into potential tools. The crow looked from the pebbles to the pitcher and back again, its brain working furiously. The concept was simple, yet brilliant. If it could not lower its beak to the water, perhaps it could raise the water to its beak. A surge of intellectual excitement replaced its despair. This was a challenge not of brute strength, which it had already proven was insufficient, but of intelligence and ingenuity. The crow, a creature known for its cleverness, felt a renewed sense of purpose. It was no longer a helpless victim of circumstance, but an active problem solver. It had a plan, a strategy born from observation and logical thinking. The solution, with its new plan firmly in mind, the crow set to work immediately. There was no time to waste. It hopped over to the nearest pebble, a small grey stone that fit perfectly in its beak. Picking it up, the crow carried it back to the pitcher. It positioned itself carefully over the opening, and with a deliberate motion dropped the pebble inside. A small plink sound echoed from within the vessel, followed by a tiny splash. The effect was almost imperceptible, but the crow, watching intently, thought it saw the water level shift ever so slightly upward. Encouraged by this initial result, the crow worked with a determined rhythm. It flew a short distance to retrieve another pebble, brought it back, and dropped it into the pitcher. Plink, then another, and another. It became a steady, methodical process. Select a pebble, carry it, drop it in. The crow ignored its fatigue and its still raging thirst, focusing all its energy on the task at hand. It was a slow and laborious effort. Each individual pebble made only a minuscule difference, and the pile of stones on the ground seemed endless. Some might have given up, deeming the process too slow and the reward too far off. But the crow was patient and persistent. It understood that great achievements are often the result of many small, consistent actions. It did not look for a single, miraculous solution, but committed itself to the incremental progress it was making, one pebble at a time. Its movements were efficient and unwavering, a testament to its singular focus. The garden was filled with the repetitive sounds of the crow's short flights, and the steady plink 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 of the pebbles landing in the water. A soundtrack of pure, unadulterated perseverance. The result, as the crow continued its painstaking work, the pile of pebbles inside the pitcher grew steadily. With each stone that was added, a small amount of water was displaced, and the collective effect began to show. The water level, which had once been so frustratingly out of reach, was now visibly rising. Slowly but surely, it crept up the inner walls of the pitcher. The crow watched the progress with a keen eye, its hope and anticipation building with every single pebble it dropped. The process was a perfect demonstration of Archimedes' principle. A scientific law understood not through formal education, but through innate intelligence and observation. The space taken up by the stones could not also be occupied by water, so the water had no choice but to rise. The surface of the water inched its way upward, past the halfway mark of the pitcher, then past the three-quarter mark. The crow could see the reflection of its own beak in the rising water, a shimmering promise of the relief to come. The initial gap between its beak and the water, which had seemed like an impassable chasm, was now shrinking with every successful drop. The water was now so high that the crow no longer had to strain to see it. It was right there, just below the rim, glistening invitingly. The crow paused for a moment, marveling at the result of its labor. The previously empty-looking pitcher was now nearly full to the brim, not just with water, but with the pebbles that had been the instruments of its salvation. The impossible had become possible, not through magic, but through the patient application of a clever idea. Success. Finally, the moment the crow had worked so tirelessly for arrived. With the addition of one last pebble, the water level rose just enough to lap against the very brim of the pitcher. The crow leaned forward, and this time there was no gap, no frustrating space between its beak and the life-sustaining liquid. It dipped its beak into the cool, clear water and drank. The feeling was one of pure, unadulterated bliss. The water soothed its parched throat and revitalized its weary body. It drank deeply, quenching a thirst that had threatened to end its life. Each gulp was a testament to its own ingenuity and an affirmation of its will to survive. After it had drunk its fill and its strength was fully restored, the crow let out a loud, triumphant caw that echoed through the quiet garden. It was a cry of victory, of a challenge met and overcome. It was no longer the weak, desperate bird that had arrived at the pitcher moments from death. It was a survivor, a testament to the power of a clever mind. With a grateful glance back at the pitcher and the scattered pebbles that had been its tools, the crow spread its powerful wings. It launched itself into the sky, flying away happily and with renewed vigor, its black feathers once again glossy and strong in the sunlight. It had faced a seemingly impossible problem and had not only survived, but had triumphed through its own resourcefulness, patience, and unwavering effort. The crow flew off, its spirit soaring as high as its body, a living example of intelligence conquering adversity. The moral of the story. The story teaches the importance of using your wits, being resourceful, and persevering through challenges. As necessity is the mother of invention, and where there is a will, there is a way.